Today I'm going to be trying to start my $50 snowblower that I got off the Facebook Marketplace. It's a unknown year, I'm guessing sometime in the 2000s. Craftsman 5.5 horsepower, 24-inch snowblower. I think it's a 536-887250. I'm not exactly sure if there's a user-friendly model number for it, but first things first, let's see if this thing actually starts. It's in somewhat unknown condition, but the guy I bought it from says it starts, it doesn't run. So we're going to put that to the test now. It does come with an electric start, so I guess I can test that as well. I've already checked that it's got oil and some fuel as well. Let's give it a little starting fluid to see if that'll help. Alright, so it starts but doesn't stay running. Next, let's try the electric start. That thing spins over pretty quick with that electric start. Let's give her some old starting fluid. Alright, so same condition. Starts but doesn't run. So starting but not running for 50 bucks is not a terrible deal. I'm going to go ahead and take apart this carburetor, remove it, and see if there's any obvious signs of maybe like a vacuum leak or fuel not getting to it. Something that might be preventing it from running for a long time. So I verified fuel was getting through here. The fuel's kind of pee-pee-ish colored, so it's probably not great fuel. Could be part of a problem. But instead of wasting some new gas, I figured I might as well take off these two, I believe they're 12mm nuts, maybe 11, but this 12mm spanner's kind of doing the trick. So I'm going to pull this off and then see what the inside of that carb looks like. Doesn't take much to get these carburetors off, just two busted nuts, a couple of turns and a tug, and it comes right out. So now we can go ahead and crack this thing open and see what it looks like. So I took this bowl apart. There's some grit and nasty stuff in it, so I'm guessing that's probably clogging the jet quite a bit in there. So I'm going to see if I can either pull that jet out or stick a hose through there with a either air compressor or one of these guys with some carb clean that out and see how that works. The float looks to be in good condition. It doesn't sound like there was any gas in there, and the needle there rather doesn't want to focus there, so you're gonna have to take my word for it. It doesn't stick, it moves nice and freely. This gasket is a little worse for the wear, but I'm pretty sure I can clean that up and reuse it. If it leaks, I'll just buy another one. So let's clean this out and see how it goes. So I sprayed out the carb a bit, sprayed out all that stuff. There wasn't really much in there, and I don't know much about these types of carbs. I think this screw actually might be the jet. That's not going to really want to focus too well, but there's some holes on the side of this which hopefully you guys will be able to see. I might try to get a picture up on the screen. That I think the fuel enters from the bottom of the screw here and then goes up into the carb there, and that might be what's blocked. But I cleaned that up a bit, and we're going to put it back in and see if it'll start or if it'll start up. It has now got some nice fresh brand new gas in it, so we're going to give it a couple of primes here until I start feeling the gas come through. We'll pull start it. If not, we'll use the electric. Hopefully these wrenches go fine. Choke is closed. Alright, switching to the electric. Better with a little bit of starting fluid. Still nothing. A little more starting fluid. Alright, I gotta check a couple things. So I found out that I was not getting any spark. This was all the way down here. It looks like it makes contact with this, grounds out. I guess this is the ignition safety switch. And there's also one here where you can pull this key out and it will cut it off, but I guess you can also put it down there. So I moved this up a little bit and I'm getting spark now, so we're gonna go ahead and try to fire it. I'm now a week older and $14 shorter. I'll show you why. Because this right here, this Huai carburetor, is brand new. Only 14 bucks shipped from Amazon. Maybe it was $14.99. I'm not really sure, but when the rebuild kit is almost the same price as a new carburetor, well, why not just get the new thing? Guarantee, you know, although it's a Chinese carburetor, but that doesn't really matter. I've used these on a couple different small engines, same style, same cast Chinese, and they last a really long time. So it comes with a couple of new parts. Main guy we're after here is this carburetor. We're going to go ahead and take the old one off again, since that was leaking every which way and about, and pop this on there, see if she'll run. I'll probably also replace the fuel hoses, and I think it comes with a nice little inline filter too. And yeah, a new primer. I don't know if the old one's screwed, but maybe we'll replace that as well. Before I pop this new one on, I'm just going to kind of show you what it looks like here. It's got a real decent feel to it. Everything feels nice and solid on it. Yeah, nice choke mechanism, clicks in perfectly on that little spring up there. And it doesn't really look like it's too cheap. The gaskets are a little cheap on it, but yeah, in comparison to this old one, this one looks pretty nice. And it looks almost exactly the same, except for this fuel line thing is pointing down a little bit. Either I can try to clock that upwards, or if not, I'm pretty sure I can connect that fuel line, not a big problem. I got to thinking, if I'm going to do a job, I might as well do it right. Especially because I do want to sell this snowblower. I live where I don't really need one, so I would like the next person that has this to have it last a really long time and work right for them every single time. So what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to remove the fuel tank, removing all this fun stuff here. I'm going to replace the fuel hose and the vacuum line that goes to the carburetor, especially since the kit comes with a new one. That way I don't have to worry about any rips or tears, or have the person, whoever buys it, run into some weird issue where it's leaking fuel, or there's not the Super Suck Deluxe coming from this hose here, and then have it fail on them. So let's go ahead, remove all this stuff, and see what we can replace while we're in there. So I removed the fuel tank to add a on-off switch, because there was no fuel on-off switch with this thing, and just having fuel sitting in your carb bowl, especially if you're going to store this for the summer, no one's really going to use it during then, you would hope. That's not really a good thing, so it's better just to have an on-off switch there. It's going to help whoever buys this out in the long run, and starting up again when they have to go and use this in winter. So I took the pull starter off and this cover off. And the starter also had to come out, which wasn't bad. It was only 3 bolts. One bolt being up there, and the other 2 down there. And so now we get to see this flywheel here. This flywheel's pretty rusty. However, that's not really an issue. These things run forever. The magnets seem pretty good for the ignition coil, the pickup there. Yeah, I had to take some of the head bolts out to remove the other stuff. So you can see as I rotate this, there's a little stuff coming on through. I guess that's probably the PB Blaster I sprayed. So there's no real compression with the head bolts partially removed. I'll probably pull off the other head bolts kind of just to see what condition the piston is in, and the head itself, maybe clean off some of the carbon while I'm in there as well. And at this point I can go ahead and replace this fuel line. I'm going to put an inline fuel filter in here since this one doesn't have one. And might as well protect your new carburetor, right? And I pulled this little guy out, the primer, so I'm going to put the new primer in with the new vacuum hose as well. Hey, look at me, I'm like Project Farm, taking the head off of small motors. There's a lot of carbon buildup over there. I'm guessing this thing hasn't really ever been cleaned out before. So what I will do is, I'm not going to reuse the head gasket because it kind of fell apart, so I'm going to make sure the surface is nice and clean. Clean up all this carbon buildup as well. Get a new head gasket on order, new exhaust gasket on order as well. And I'll just be happier knowing that this thing's going to have really good compression. This piston looks great. Doesn't really rock side to side. Tells me the rings are pretty good probably in there. There's no oil up here or anything weird like blow by. So plug looks good too. I'll probably replace the plug as well. And then I guess I'll probably just be waiting on parts. I might paint this up too, just get as much on there as I can, make it look pretty, and make sure it's durable as well so it can last many winters to come. So right now, let's go ahead and clean off all this carbon. I was able to clean off most of that carbon buildup, and I've also got a new head gasket and exhaust gasket on the way. It's now another week later, and I've got a new head gasket. So we're going to go ahead and install this new head gasket, put everything all back together, and then see if this thing will run. So the head is back on and it's all torqued to spec. We're going to go ahead and give this a compression test. Right now I don't have the carburetor on or the exhaust manifold, so this will give us the best possible numbers, even though it's a cold compression test, because there's nothing restricting the flow of air throughout the motor whatsoever right now. I just put the electric start back on, so we'll give that a test as well. We're going to compression test it with the electric start and see what numbers we get. That's like 130, or just closer to 140 psi of compression. So this motor, even though, like I said, it's open here, is a really healthy motor. So let's go ahead, put everything back together, and see if she'll start. There's now fresh gas in it, new carburetor's all hooked up. I got to figure out how this throttle mechanism works, because as you can see, it doesn't really move at all. So I got to figure out what's going on with that. Maybe I need a new spring or something. But yeah, even without the exhaust manifold, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over, see if it'll start. I just primed it up a little bit with the new priming bulb. Well, I would say it looks like we've got ourselves a runner. So I'm going to go home and get a new exhaust manifold gasket for it, and then put the exhaust manifold, or put the whole exhaust back on it rather, and then I'm going to see if I can drive it around, see if it'll run under its own power. And I've also really got to figure out that throttle issue.